The agenda, any additions or deletions? Not seeing any. Robin's moving the agenda.
Yep.
Vote. Blaine and Dustin, I need you to turn your cameras on, please. Robin, you got to vote.
I did.
You took it off, I think.
I think I got moved from here. I'm wondering if this is me.
Okay. Vote from there then.
Okay.
Okay, that's carried.
Floyd, this is supposed to be.
Oh, sorry. So used to sit there. The old fella can't read. Yeah.
I think the name tags might have been moved because I thought that mine was here when I walked in.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't pay attention.
Sorry, guys.
Are you ready, sir? Can we
Aye.
accommodate you now?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. We will go into 3.1. KPMG for the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mayor Hamilton. Just a few words before we get started with the presentation. Pleased to introduce Kirana. She's from KPMG. She'll walk us through the audited financial statements and financial information return. Administration is seeking approval for the 2025 audited financial statements and the 2025 financial information return, or commonly known as the FIR. Council will also note that there is an opportunity under Section 5 today for the closed session opportunity, if council so wishes, to have folks leave the room and ask questions of the auditor in closed session.
Great, thank you. So my name is Kirana Braid. I'm here from KPMG to go over the audited financial statements. First, I'll start by going through the status of the audit. So the audit is complete with the exception of our discussion today, council's approval of the financial statements, and a signed representation letter from management. I'd also like to note our independence. As your auditors, we are required to maintain independence. Myself and the rest of the audit team are all independent of the county for the purposes of completing the audit. So moving on to the independent auditor's report. So through this report, we are prepared to issue an unmodified or clean opinion over these financial statements. This would indicate that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of Cypress County as at December 31st, 2025, and its results of operations, its changes in net financial assets, and its cash flows for the year ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Our report outlines management and those charged with governance, your responsibilities to the financial statements, as well as our responsibilities as your auditor. So moving on to the statement of financial position. So total financial assets increased by $12.4 million from the prior year. Specifically, cash and cash equivalents increased by $5.3 million from the prior year. This relates to positive cash from operating activities that were offset by cash outflows related to capital assets, investments, and financing. We'll see more details about this on the statement of cash flows. Other notable item are receivables. Taxes and grants in place of receivables increased by $1.8 million due to payment timing, and trade and other receivables increased largely due to general municipal grants receivables in relation to capital projects that occurred during the year. Moving down to financial liabilities, the total financial liabilities decreased by $1.1 million from the prior year. Most notably, this was long-term debt that changed due to principal repayment of debt by the county. As a result, net financial assets increased by $13.5 million over the year. Moving on to non-financial assets, so those increased by $5.1 million from the prior year. This largely relates to the net book value of capital assets. This is a function of acquisitions during the year of about $13.6 million, disposals of about $200,000, as well as annual amortization of about $8.2 million. Overall, your accumulated surplus as at December 31st, 2025 was $324 million. This is a function of $18.6 million in a surplus over the year. Moving on to the statement of operations. So operating revenue increased by 4 million. This increased across all revenue types. Specifically, net municipal taxes increased by about 2.6 million. Expenses also increased by about 3.1 million. Most notably, administration increased by 1.7. Other notable areas include roads, streets, walks, lighting, as well as wastewater treatment and disposal, and then family and community support. Before other items, there was 15.2 million in a surplus. And then in the other items, we have government transfers for capital of 3.6 million, and that is revenue recognized as a result of capital projects, as well as a small loss on capital asset disposals of 144,000. Overall, the ending surplus for the year was 18.6 million. So moving on to the statement of cash flows. So this statement shows the change in the cash position over the year, There was a positive cash from operating activities of 21.6 million. This was offset by negative cash outflows from capital activities, primarily related to the purchase of capital assets, as well as cash outflows from investments, as well as repayment on debt. Moving on to the significant accounting policies. So I'd like to know that these are consistent with prior years, and they have been consistently applied in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, which is the framework that the county reports under. Moving on to Note 2. Note 2 goes through the future accounting pronouncements. There were no new standards that were adopted in 2025. This note shows the upcoming changes in standards. Most notably, I'd like to indicate the conceptual framework for financial reporting in the public sector and the related financial statement presentation standards that will be coming along with that. That'll take effect in 2027. Moving forward, the next note that I'd like to highlight is the deferred revenue note, which is Note 9. Page 14. Perfect. So funding received during the year was about 4.2 million. In operating funding was the local government fiscal framework of about 316,000, and then capital funding consisted of grants for the Water for Life program of about 2.8 million, as well as the strategic transportation infrastructure program funding of about 500,000. Total revenue recognized was about 4.4 million during the year. As noted earlier, Water for Life funding for projects associated with 2 capital projects, that was recognized of about 2.8 million, as well as strategic transportation infrastructure funding of about 633,000. All of the operating grant revenue that was received was recognized during the year. Skipping ahead to Note 13, I'll just quickly touch on that one. So Note 13 shows the accumulated surplus, and this just shows a good breakdown between the unrestricted surplus, restricted surplus, as well as your equity and TCA. Moving forward towards the schedules. Page 25. 25. So just starting with the schedules, I won't go into much detail on them, but just highlight what they cover. So Schedule 1 shows the schedule of government transfers. Schedule 2 does a good job of showing the segmented disclosure. It breaks out the revenue and expenses by function. Schedule 3 shows those changes in accumulated surplus. And then Schedule 4 just shows the schedule of net municipal taxes. Schedule 5, the schedule of expenses by object, does a better job of just demonstrating the expenses that were incurred during the year. Most specifically, the salaries, wages, and benefits increased, as well as purchases from other government. And then Schedule 6 just shows the schedule of tangible capital assets. Again, that's where you can see that those acquisitions and disposals, etc. And that is everything I had for the statements. Lastly, I'd like to thank management for their assistance in the audit this year, and their efforts were appreciated.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the, everybody got a chance to read them? They were emailed out yesterday, I do believe, or the day before.
Well, I got a question, and we can go and do that in closed, right?
Is it about staff or?
Well, staff, no, just
No. Just questions on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it in open. What's your question?
The three, I'm gonna go back. All the way to. All the way back to, page 4. Such a big change in trade and other receivables. That's about a $5.5 million switcheroo,
Yes, so the
positive to a negative.
So the change in trade and other receivables is a function of the change in cash position. So just as trade and other receivables goes up, that kind of illustrates that cash theoretically would go down. That's largely a function of that grant, the 2.8 million for the capital projects that occurred during the year that we talked about with deferred revenue. That grant was receivable at year end. So that's primarily the cause for that significant increase in that line.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm done. No, it just went so fast that should have stayed at home.
Anybody else have anything?
Numbers are going in the right direction.
That's
Very much so.
about it, yeah. Keith, you have anything? All right, no more questions? All right, thank you very much. We will take a 5-minute break here.
Mayor Hamilton, if council would consider, there is a recommended motion that would come with this presentation. That is that council approves the 2025 audited financial statements and the 2025 financial information return as presented.
Guess we need that before we take the break, don't we? Mr. Proctor is making that motion. Any questions or comments on it? Not seeing any. Vote. Okay, that's carried. All right, that was carried, so we'll take a recess.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, if council, I would bring to attention while we have Kiriana with us, if council would like to go into closed session, just either take advantage of that or say they're okay, either way.
Do you guys want to go into closed session for any questions, or? Everybody's good? There you go. Here. Thank you very much. Okay. 4.1. Mr. Taves.
Well, thank you, council, and through the chair, and to those online, administration is happy to bring the 2026-09 property tax bylaw for council's consideration. Administration today is seeking first, second, unanimous consent as well as third reading today. We're not bound by timelines today, so if council would like to see something different, there's no time constraints on this. I'll just keep that in mind as we go forward. So in the request for decision, annually, this is a bylaw that will be brought to council's attention to fund the budget that's been approved every year. Cypress County, we have 3 requisitioning bodies. It's the school tax, or the Alberta School Foundation Fund. We have the Cypress View Seniors Foundation, also known as the Seniors Lodging, colloquially called. And we also have the designated industrial property, and that requisition is given to us through the property for industrial property, typically involved in properties that are regulated by the AER, AUC, and et cetera, would be a DIP property. In the past, many councillors will remember the 20th percentile, that we council agreed to a guiding principle to have tax rates sit at the 20th percentile. And the idea was to move the tax rates into a balanced, defendable, kind of fact-based movement to understand where we wanted to go with those tax rates. Based on the 20th percentile, out of the about give or take 67 municipalities, excuse me, it was recognized that the median tax rate, so that's the middle number, the 20th percentile being, you line up 100 municipalities and we sit at the 20th position as the 80th lowest, or position. So that's kind of how a percentile works. It was recognized that the remainder of the province in 2025 had moved forward about 3.89%, or give or take 4%. So that 3.98% is reflected in both the non-residential property as well as the small business property class that council has established through bylaw. And that movement would produce about 1.5 million additional dollars. The administration anticipates bringing forward a new methodology that would replace the 20th percentile as council starts to build out their strategic plan and start to tie the required funding to achieve that plan over the next number of years. Yeah. New for 2026, this was announced at the RMA Spring Convention, but Minister Williams allowed municipalities to legally identify the amount of property tax required to pay the policing fund requisition. Administration is proposing to show that police funding both in the bylaw and on the tax rate, so people can identify more easily where their money's going, to have an understanding of the municipality, and just a smaller portion of their tax rate comes to the municipality, where also a large part, and I don't have the exact breakdown just per property, but about 40% leaves the municipality to go to fund those other requisitions. Yeah, so the proposed amount for this year is a 0% change to farmland property tax, a 0% change to non-residential property tax, and then non-residential and small businesses. These properties are linked by a 0.75 ratio, and that's from the Municipal Government Act, that you can only be about 25% lower for the small businesses than you can be for the larger businesses, also known as the non-residential class. And M&E, the M&E tax rate is tied to the non-residential class, and unfortunately, council does not have the lever to tax machinery and equipment at a different rate. So those are the proposals. We know recently for the future that council's identified some more some different projects kind of available to them. Be happy to discuss that or take any questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Taves. I'm as the person that kind of brought that concept up originally, I think that we've moved beyond what the intent was. It was never intended to kind of be a every year we maintain that. It was always we want to set a target on the wall, and that's what we're going to achieve. And we achieved that a couple of years ago. And I don't know if it would be useful or helpful as we go from now to this new methodology, but I'd be prepared to kind of make a motion to retire that past methodology. You know, I think that the desire to continually resatisfy that, I think might be more work than it is necessary, because it's, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a very new day right now. You know, we use that and we're in a good place because of it. But moving forward, I look at some of our aspirations as council with, you know, the potential of a hockey arena and things like that, and utilizing the linear that we have, and we've never really tried to leverage that in the past. But to be frank, we could fund that entire build in 5 years by adjusting some of our linear tax rates. And I think that it's time that we seriously consider that. So, Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for a motion to receive this or whatever that would be, I'm prepared to make the recommended. However, beyond this, if it would be helpful, I would also be prepared to make a motion to retire that 20th percentile methodology, so that we can actually start moving forward into a new day.
Okay. That would be a separate motion altogether on that. You have a question, Mr. Hawk?
Through the chair to Mr. Tays. On our minimum municipal tax on any parcel is $20. That I think, how do I put it? Seems really low. Do you know what the other counties or minimums are? Because $20 for a quarter that's a pretty minimal tax. So.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Hawk. I don't have the exact numbers, but I've been around the minimum tax kind of review from time to time over the years. I hadn't done this one this year. Wouldn't be surprised to see 35. I've seen 200. The one thing I'll share that when I was investigating it, Cypress County is big. And a lot of parcels, or what you'd say even marginal parcels, have a very, very low tax rate. And specifically south of Cypress Hills, very, very many quarters, sections. And the price change of a minimum parcel can be quite disruptive. You know, $5 is a 20% increase. And when somebody has very, very number of land. So we're a little bit sensitive to that. I think it's ready for a move. Be happy for someone to put out a number and update the bylaw accordingly.
But that wouldn't fall.
Go ahead.
That wouldn't fall into this right here. That would be something separate, a separate motion altogether.
I think we could, I'll look at legislative services. If we were to make a change to that bylaw, we could approve the bylaws amended and read it right through. We don't have, yeah, so.
Okay.
See, I fall into that. I do. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, so I would definitely like, I mean, I'm okay with it, you know, going to 25 or, you know, moving it up. Not a big increase all at once, but start moving it, because I believe it's been 20 for quite a few years. And with the cost of our fire equipment and the way we are doing stuff, I mean, we had that fires there last week before the snowstorm, and when we got Halo and our fire chief up there dictating how our fire trucks can go here and there, he's watching because of the wetness, telling the trucks you can't go there, you know, what type of trucks can go where without getting stuck to try to fight the fires. You know, in some of this land, yeah, we need that, because otherwise the fire trucks and that can't get in there because they have no clue from the ground. So all that comes with a cost. Everything comes with a cost, and our new fire trucks are wildland firefighting stuff to get in there. So I'm okay with seeing it going to 25 as a start.
Per quarter, yeah.
Per quarter.
Mr. Chairman, I just heard the question, you know, would this be per quarter? It would be for the existence of any parcel of land, and it could be including, so I think the minimum tax covers about 500 or so accounts, and it could be a tiny little severed piece from when a highway went through years ago. So it wouldn't just, there are some quarter sections, but there might be an instance where a quarter section years ago was divided in half. And so each 80 acres, those would also be subject to the minimum. So it's anytime there's the existence of a parcel. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So would that, that pool, what would that equate to? Like, are we talking $5,000 that we're talking about increasing by 25%, or are we talking about, you know, it's only $2,500 bucks?
If it's 500
Yeah, 500 parcels at 25.
at 5, because it's
5.
already at 20.
It's already at 20.
Yeah, so we're only
It's gonna
increasing.
go to 25.
Yeah,
Is that parcels or people? Well, there wouldn't be people. There's no living.
that would be parcels. Do
Parcels.
you know what that number is?
Parcels.
Yeah, and it's just an estimate that if there's 500 parcels, so $5 times 500 parcels would be $2,500. So it's not the big fish, but I think from an equitable tax base, I think that's really up to council to say, is $20 not enough? But it's
I think that I'd be curious to know where everybody else is at with this, because to raise it by a 25% when, if everybody else is at $60 or $80, I'd rather forego it for now and address it next year. And actually, because increasing it by $2,500 isn't significant. And if we do it by 20% right now, are we setting the expectation that we're going to do this 20% at a time, when really it may be necessary to do it by 400%? I'm not suggesting that that's what it is. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if everybody else has it at, you know, $60, that's a 300% increase. That might be what's appropriate. Yeah.
But talking with other landowners and that, even myself, I'd rather see little increases year by year instead of a big whopper.
If we're trying to get it up by 300% over 10 years, you know, that's still, like, now we're talking, are we doing 30% every single year by the time that we get there? I'm just, what's appropriate? Where are we at? And we're talking about $2,500 right now. Like, it's, we're not talking, honestly, is it worth administration's time to change 500 roles? It's almost going to take, you're going to be break even by the time that you do it.
And through the chair, administration's never worried about the time or effort it takes. It's truly the principles, what council would like. You don't need not to worry about the time it takes. There is some consideration, and there's some discussion, while not written in the Municipal Government Act, there is some consideration that the the minimum tax should represent about the cost to assess the property, to mail out the notice, to receive the notice, to receive the check, to process the check. So quite often that minimum tax, because it is quite oppressive that the lowest valued properties have the highest tax rate when you think about it that way from a methodology, but the minimum tax should represent about the cost of processing, administering the taxes on the property. That's kind of the spirit of a minimum tax.
And through the chair, just a quick search, Nehill County, for example, is $125 for minimum tax. The issue here is not about a significant increase. As the CAO, $2,500 is, Councilor Kerpoit's exactly correct. We'll spend that in administrative time just making the changes. The issue is that it's been left alone for so many years that it's any change now, a $5 change is a 20% increase in the tax. I mean, if you want to look at it percentage-wise, if you were to go to 125 to match, say, for example, Nehill County, well, what are you? You're a your 500% increase. So the percentages, unfortunately, are not always relevant in terms of these conversations because the number is so low that a $1 increase is a significant increase in tax. I think the goal is what does council want to get out of the minimum tax? So if we had 500 properties that paid $125 a year, what are we earning? $50,000 a year? It's not the, I think there is some opportunity to talk about where we should go with that, but at the end of the day, $5 is going to be worth the phone calls for $5.
Mr. Brost?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, I agree that there maybe potentially should be an increase, but maybe do it, because I agree with, that's the problem with the percentage based on this, it's kind of, everybody kind of spooked if they're up 500%, but if they actually understood the reasons for the increase, it might help.
Okay.
And through the chair, we completely agree with a new model. I would suggest to Councillor Kerpoit, in terms of motions, that potentially it would make, that it would, I think we'd be more comfortable coming back to council with a new plan and then at that point rescind the 20 percentile as opposed to getting rid of it today and leaving us with nothing in the interim. Either way, it's workable, but I would prefer to come to council with a new plan and then council say, we like the new plan, we'll get rid of the old plan at that time.
And I appreciate that completely. I guess my concern is that the 20th percentile was never intended to be what we're using it as right now. And so like it was always intended to be, where are we going over the next 4 or 5 years? That was our target. And I think that somehow over time it just became kind of what we were measuring it against, which I think to your point is, in the absence of a plan, what do you have, right? And so we're just kind of going to that in the meantime. But if that is what is also getting us kind of caught in this, what do we do with the minimums right now? The absence of a plan also begs for a justification of why we do what we do, which is really what we need to get to, right? And if the $20 as a minimum right now is what's kind of being held up by that, I'm okay with holding off until, down the road, but I don't think that we have a policy that states that we hold to the 20th percentile every time either. It was more of I just kind of want to break free of that so that we're not being held to that as we go on. You know what I mean? Because like we've been kind of talking about this for the last couple of years, and every time that we talk about it, I bring this up. And so just kind of wondering when we cut the cord.
Okay, Dustin, did you want to talk on that, or you just want me to throw your suggestion out? Okay. Dustin's saying maybe we should just bump it up to $35. Look at that for an increase. So it's start and move everything. And it makes it worthwhile to start moving that everything, because $5 isn't worthwhile, all of the cost in our staffing.
And through the chair, I would also recommend that for a new plan, a complete new plan, to walk away from the 20 percentile that Councillor Kirkwood has spoken about. I think budget would be a really good time to bring that plan forward and see see what the new plan would look like as we prepare the budget for 2027.
Yep, go ahead.
So, Councillor Hogan, or Councillor, sorry, CAO, I don't know if that's a demotion or a promotion, but the CAO Hogan, how would you feel? Because one of the thoughts I wanted to bring forward now as well is with this tax bylaw today, if we felt that it was time to start kind of moving away from that kind of 2.5 to 1 ratio that we're currently at with our non-resident or linear, and to start increasing that, would we not just simply by the act of no longer abiding by the 20th kind of be abandoning that? Like, is now the time to look at that and discuss? I wouldn't mind having that conversation a little bit and getting clarity on whether we currently have, I think Mr. Taves commented on the 70% ratio or the 0.7 ratio that exists between small business and linear. I'd like to get a little bit more information on that, so that if we did talk about going to a 4 to 1 or 5 to 1 ratio at some point, like we're talking about $10 to $15 million a year that could finance some of these major projects that we're talking about right now. Do we want, if we're talking about going from 20 to 35 now, do we also talk about doing that on the non-res side, and what would the implications be on that?
Which one? Mr. Taves, I believe, has some.
So through the chair, we've had actually, Mr. Taves and I have had several conversations on this exact issue. Right now, we are just a touch over 3 to 1, and the MJ allows us to go to 5 to 1. The challenge for us right now is because council is stretched to the 75% that we're allowed to take the small business maximum to compared to the non-residential. If we were to increase to, for example, this year to 4 to 1, we do know that 4 to 1 would probably net us around $11 million in additional revenue. 5 to 1 would be around $23 million in additional revenue. The issue is, how do we do that without, we want to focus that on large industrial properties. We don't want to drag small business down that road. Because we're already at the 75% mark, we've already investigated, and the MGA does allow us some flexibility. However, we probably would like to reach out, and both Mr. Taves and I talked about it the other day, reach out and get a legal opinion as to, there is some wording in the MGA that allows it. It says that if a council sees it as equitable to waive all or any part of a tax, it may. We're curious from a legal standpoint as to how the court would view the word equitable. If council determined that it was equitable to waive the tax, to waive or reduce the taxes back to the current small business tax, but increase the ratio on the large dip properties to a 4 to 1 or to a 5 to 1, we wonder what that would look like if it was challenged by somebody who was being increased and small business was staying at its current rate. So we have some questions about that. I think I know what the legal answer is, and I think we're in good stead. But it's a unique enough position that I do think that we probably need some legal guidance. Steve, would you disagree with me?
No, I don't disagree with that at all. What CAO Hogan's kind of talking about is basically Section 347 of the Municipal Government Act allows for council to waive, council or reduce. It balances on if council thinks it's equitable and you think it's fair to have different rates, then that's in council's purview. The second section of this, and this came back up in 2015, I remember it very, very well, when back in the day, the minister had used some assessment work. It's the assessment year modifier, but they used some assessment things as a political tool. And at that time, they had reduced wells and pipe by upwards of 15 and 10% respectively for each property class. So immediately overnight, the municipality got a 10%, 15% haircut, turned into a few $1 million. So at that point, there's section 2 of the municipal, 347 section 2, and it says, council may phase in a tax increase or decrease resulting from the preparation of any new assessment. Now in Alberta, assessments, the team of assessors we have, do assessments every year. And so the balance is the question of, is it a new assessment just coming on board, or is it any annual reassessment? So that's the question to new. I think I knew what new is, but the courts might disagree. So, but that's where we're at on that one.
There's a little more work to do on this.
The other, what do you think it's?
No, go ahead.
The other option, and this is, you know, not speaking for industry, but we know what direction we want to be going in. It might even be a good thing to, you know, pass this as it is, have conversation with industry over the next, because at the end of the day, we know what we want to do, we know where we want to go. And industry also has the opportunity to look at this and go, hey, you know what, no, we're going to get in behind, and, you know, we gotta pay for our project somehow. And if we can maybe sit down with industry and see if they want to become more partners in the community and put their names on some buildings, we might be able to accomplish through philanthropic approaches what, you know, we would otherwise be forced to do through tax rates. Maybe gives us a year to have some of those conversations. So, is there anybody else that's kind of thinking this way at all? I'm kind of curious if I'm.
Well, I do want to know if it needs to go up.
Yeah.
What's up?
I said, I like the idea that it should go up. And I also like the idea that Steve and Al come back with something with it for us, what they think is reasonable. Because I don't know if 35 is too much or 10%'s not enough, or,
I don't think 35 is too much on a
Yeah,
quarter.
on the minimum
Could
tax
be.
rate, it's kind of a redundant change.
Through the chair, just doing some more research, Red Deer County is $39. So the minimum tax rates are all over the map. I just pulled it up on their, and just did a quick Google search. So we go from 125 in Yale County to 39. And at the end of the day, compared to what we're talking about in terms of increasing to the maximum of the ratio of 5 to 1, we're really talking about a rounding error in the budget.
Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking where everybody's coming from here. We should go ahead with what we have today and let staff bring back an idea on what to do with the, because just $5 isn't enough to even worry about to cover staff costs. So we'll look at that for the future. Mr. Proctor, do you have something?
Yeah, I think to raise it by $5, people are going to be thinking, what are you doing, $5? I think we're better off coming back with a proposal that puts us in line with other jurisdictions.
Do we want to do anything with our linear? Because we're talking millions of dollars of implication, they're not 2,500.
And for council's information, and sorry to jump in, Mr. Chair, when council's considering some of these things, some handy numbers are, if the non-residential tax rate increases 1%, it's about $460,000. So 1% change, big impact. If council were to increase the residential tax rate by 1%, would equate to about $52,000. So, you know, when we're talking about, you know, kind of solving that problem, it's really in the non-residential tax rates, the conversation. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I didn't consider the minimum tax rate at all. It wasn't on my bingo card today for the simple reason that it was kind of that $2,500 conversation. Happy to have it updated and move forward. And then when council is considering tax rates, the farmland tax rate, a 1% change to farmland tax rate equates to about $8,000. So non-res, $460,000. We're talking upwards of being able to do something with that revenue. Residential, $52,000. And farmland about $8,000. So relatively thinking when we're looking at that movement and change. For example, the 3.89%, it's roughly 1.5 million additional dollars. Where in farmland, we wouldn't be hitting the numbers to write home about.
$3,200 or $32,000 in farmland. Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Taves, would it be fair to say that as we're looking, like, the 1% increase equating to $400,000, we'd be better off to utilize that ratio, and that's going to generate significantly more than even what offsite levies and development would be. We could utilize that to help create incentives on development in Dunmore Junction that we're talking about, with the potential for the arena build, for increasing our reserves. Like, I know when the 20th percentile conversation first started, I did the math, and had we been at the 20th percentile for the previous 10 years, we would have had $400 million in our reserves. My concern is that we can continue to look at it and go, okay, well, we're good now. Yeah, we're good now. But if we look at the tangible assets and the review that we're doing on all of that, if we have the potential of $1 billion worth of unfunded liabilities within the county over the next 35 years, taking into consideration our administrative building, future growth within Dunmore Junction, with the arena, all these other things, looking at that right there, like what CAO Hogan mentioned with regards to going to the 4-to-1, it's $11 million. That's $11 million. That's 5 years worth of ag tax combined. Just in us making a decision today on whether or not we wanted to utilize some of that now. We can look at it again for later on, but that's 11 million that goes down the river that we'll never see again if we don't do something with it now as a potential. I'm not suggesting we do the whole thing. Maybe we even go just 3.5 to 1, but do we just want to leave it at the 3%, or do we want to do something a little bit more with it?
That's 11 years of farm. More than, they're only 780,000 a year right now.
We know we want to be building.
And Mr. Chair, just some quick math, and I calculated it 5-to-1, not 4-to-1, so it would be slightly less than this, but, and these are rough, they're not to the very, when you do mill rates, they're usually 4-5 points after the decimal place. For us to increase to the 5-to-1, we're currently approximately at 2.9% residential, at least that's what's recommended in the bylaw. That would take us to 14.5 mill rate, would be all the way to 5-to-1. So your non-residential rate would be 14.5. Your business tax, which would be 75% of that, would be 10.875, up from currently 6.9. So your small business tax would take about a 30% hit, and your non-residential would take probably a 42% hit. I'm just some quick math. I'd have to have somebody way smarter than me recalculate that, but that's just my quick math in terms of what that would do. 9.2 to 14.5, and the 5-to-1, and the increases, like I said, that would generate 23 million. The 4-to-1, and I can recalculate at the 4-to-1 rate, but you would generate, I think we calculate $11 million. So at those numbers, we'd probably be about an 8.5 mill rate on small business, and would probably be around 12 on the residential if council were to go that way on a 4-to-1. So the question really becomes, I think for council's consideration is do you want all the business tax rates to increase, or do you want us to would you want administration to find a way to calculate rates so that the small business tax was was somewhat protected or not. I think that becomes, our small business people are probably pretty important in the municipality. All of our taxpayers are pretty important in the municipality, but is there a class in particular that we want to make sure is not overburdened? And I think that's really the question.
Mr. Kirby-White?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I've spoken to some of the bigger small businesses in the county, and nobody wants to pay more tax. But usually when I talk to guys that are coming in and they look at what they pay for property tax, that's a fairly small line item in their business expenses. I know when we originally talked about the 20th percentile, we at that time saw 35% increases to our small business tax, 65% increases on our linear. I didn't have a single phone call because we're still in that, like at 5-1, I don't even think that we're above the provincial average at that point. Like we are a very competitive municipality. And I think that the conversation when it comes down to business still comes down to what are we giving for value? And when I think about in Dunmore here, we've had conversations about fire flow and water, and we still haven't solved that issue. And I think we need to get to the point where if we are preparing to, leverage and increase what some of that is, you can sell that to your customer and to your ratepayer by providing value. And maybe we solve some of those problems as we do it. I know back in the day it was, I think, a $4 million line item to increase our water supply in parts of Dunmore. If costs go up, there's benefits that come from having a higher mill rate. They might pay a little bit more in tax, but if we can solve some of those problems, we got to provide value with it if that does happen. I know numerous of us at the council table, we make decisions all the time that increase our own expenses, but in business, expenses happen, and so it's just a question of is it fair, is it reasonable, and as a municipality, are we making it an environment that is providing for more competition that makes them more successful. I think that we're making decisions right now that are good for business within the county. We got to pay for it somehow.
Mr. Ritz?
To the chair, to Steve, could you explain to me, it says here, summary of proposed municipal tax change and the non-municipal tax rates change. Would you mind explaining that a little bit to me?
Absolutely, through the chair. It's a great question.
On the first, the numbers are higher, and the second, is there a cumulative thing, or what is that?
Yeah, absolutely, through the chair. So the municipal tax rate is what council's in control of. You get to set your destiny of that level of taxation. In the first paragraph of the RFD, where it talks about the other requisitioning bodies that have legal ability to flow cash through the municipality, such as the school tax. It's measured against the house, comes to the county, and they do a direct withdrawal from our account every quarter. So the people at home, their tax bill from what it was last year will be affected by that amount. About 40% of those taxes are out of council's control. So for farmland, for example, school tax this year has gone up about 12%. That's what the province wants. They want about an extra 12%. So when you blend those two rates together, as you're baking the cake, the cake is 3.9% bigger next year, without out of council's control. I can carry on if you want more.
No, That explains it.
You understand?
Yeah, it makes sense now.
And through the chair, math is a wonderful thing. Although some people think it's difficult, it's actually not that hard. We haven't even talked about the residential rate. I'll give you a quick example, and I'm not suggesting this, this is just purely a math problem. Currently, our residential rate is 2.9, at least that's what's proposed, is around 2.9. Remember that the 5-to-1 is based on a ratio based on the baseline of the residential rate. If the mill rate residentially were to increase by 1 mill rate, but a 30% increase, significant, but I'm just using that for example, that would take the 5-to-1 to 19.5. We're now talking about if you were to go to that in the next couple of years, or this year, or in the future, you'd be talking about generating probably over 30 million in taxation just off that, and still be legally inside the Municipal Government Act. Because once you hit the 5-to-1, you're tied with like a frozen rope to the residential rate. If the residential rate goes up a half a mil, you can go up 2.5 on the but that's the limitation. I can tell you right now in the province there are many municipalities, particularly north of Edmonton, that their tax rates for non-residential, for linear, et cetera, are north of 15. MD Bonneville, where it just came from. And we were maxed out at the 5-to-1. So I think we focus on the linear, we focus on the small business, but there's also a residential part to play here as well. That residential rate really controls what you can go up to and increase the ceiling. I'm not suggesting it today. I'm only suggesting that that's the math. Not everybody understands how that 5-to-1 works, and it's based off of the mill rate for residential rates, and then we're limited to a 5-to-1 ratio between that rate and a higher rate. Even going from 2.9 to 3 gets us 3/4 of a mill rate at the other end. So it's something for council to consider when they're working this through and baking the cake. Is what's the big picture look like as opposed just to the small picture. Our residents are getting the advantage. We will point out that next year and then the year after that, we're going to be in some fairly significant high-value capital projects that not only will have to be funded, but also have to money from the asset management program. Will also have to start going to those projects, so there's money to repair and maintain and replace 30, 40, 50 years down the road as well. And again, for everybody watching, I'm not suggesting a raise in the residential rate. I'm only saying it's a math problem.
He said.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to CEO Hogan's point, I think that at the end of the day, we've got to reconcile our tax rate with our vision. And we set the tax rate at the 20th percentile because that was affordable and it was value-based, but it was also set with no idea on where we wanted to go. It was about maintaining and helping to establish reserves that we needed to, and we've been successful in that in many, many ways. When we first started that, I think we had 85 million in reserves. We're probably plus 30 right now. 30 million additional dollars that we have as a result of the 20th percentile, and that served our purpose from that sense. But we've also come to terms with the fact that we have hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded liabilities that we're still coming in, and we're figuring out what our reserves look like so that we have that. That's just the reserve part. We're talking about water, wastewater, like water and wastewater. We're talking about developing. We're talking about 2 sheets and curling rinks. That all is going to take money. And I think that what we have proposed right now is a very good way of maintaining, and the 3.9 is a great way of slowly increasing and moving that needle. And I know CEO Hogan is not recommending anything, but I am, in a sense, recommending that we are eyes wide open right now with the fact that our vision and the position that we are claiming that we are wanting to take in the region is going to take money over and above what we're preparing and what we've been saving for. And so I appreciate CEO Hogan's point, and I'll just rephrase it in a sense that for every quarter that we increase the residential by, the limit of the ceiling of what we can generate on linear is $1.25. And that $1.25, like you said, so we increased by a quarter over on residential could potentially, like, we're talking about massive amounts of unrecognized potential. And I want to be very clear, because I recognize that this is, we've got Jed is here from the news, we've got people that are watching, and I'm not talking about recklessness. I'm talking about wise decision-making of municipal governments that are looking out for our communities, that we recognize that growth is the way, and sustainability is going to be dependent on wise decision-making now and execution tomorrow. And that execution is going to take dollars. And, we can pass it right now, but this will literally, we'll lose 25% of our term and a year worth of revenue generating on this. I think that we'd be foolish right now not to, at very least, advise staff to move to the 3.5 to 1 for this year. That would be, even if we kept residential where it is now, we moved to a 3.5 to 1 on the linear, on the non-res, and knowing that we'll have more fulsome conversations, that would still kind of be in that $5 to $6 million in additional revenue. That would help us to start moving in the direction that we know we need to be going. To develop Dunmore Junction is going to be 40, 50, 60 million over time. It's not cheap. And so we just need to, recognize that to do things, it takes money.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of conversation about how can we maximize what we have to work with now? How can we pay for the things we want to do with the tax base we have now? And I think what we got to think about is what we do today will decide whether other businesses and other residents want to join us. And if we lose any of those, then we're going backwards. So we don't want to be the most expensive place in Alberta. We want to be the cheapest place in Alberta, and that will entice people to come here.
Not the cheapest, but somewhere balanced.
Yes, balanced. Thank you.
Through the chair, just again, some quick math at a 3.5 to 1. My math tells me that would look at the small business tax would be increasing to 7.6, and the large industrial would go from 9.2 to 10.15. And again, the small business will go from 6.9 to 7.6 at 3.5. I get somebody way smarter than me, Mr. Daves, to confirm my math, but I think we're pretty close to that. Yeah, we'd be at 10.15 on non-res, and we'd be small business at 7.6, which is up 0.7 mil, 3/4 of a mil rate on small business, and up 2.5 mil on non-res.
I have it at 16%. Yeah, and these are round numbers. They'll be perfected, but I used a little bit more whole numbers than specific decimals. So I was about in the same. I think we have about a 16% increase to that tax rate, and it lands us net about $7.25 million.
I think I like Robin's idea of making a small change now and having another look at it for later. That would be my suggestion.
So your small change is what's presented?
What?
Mayor Hamilton, just for clarification, our ratio is currently 3.15. If the proposal was to move to 3.5, the increase would be about 16% for non-residential property, small business, as well as machinery and equipment. It would amount to about $7.25 million.
Well, Mr. Brost.
And some of these numbers keep changing from what I'm hearing, it's 10%, 16%. I'd just like to see it on paper more in front of me to make a better decision.
Mr. Kirby-White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I hear where Councilor Bros is coming from. In my head right now, if we look at what we did with the 20th percentile, if we said in the next 5 years we wanted to get up to a 5-to-1, it kind of puts us in a similar position where we're eventually going to have to start doing something. And if we go from 3-to-1 to 5-to-1 over 5 years, it's going to be about 4 points every year, and that's basically what I'm recommending right now. If we take, so when I looked at our financials and we went through that presentation earlier, our linear contribution was about 29 million. What, without going through here, like just roughly, our small business contribution through assessment and taxation every year right now would be about what? About 7? 6?
I can do that quick and get a really,
Because
really
if
tight number
it's what
on
I'm
that.
thinking that it is, we're talking about a 16% increase to small business, but it literally doubles the contribution. Like business people are good at numbers. We recognize that, you know, sometimes you got to put a little bit in and there's investment that comes with it. Again, we've never, and to Councillor Proctor, I in zero way have I ever wanted to be the most expensive municipality in the province. That's why the 20th percentile was presented the way that it was originally. The interesting thing with this is we're not actually moving away from the 20th percentile number on some of the smaller ones. We're just not leveraging on the oil and gas side. And if memory serves me correct, Mr. Taves, like on some of those oil and gas properties, like we're talking about a couple $100 a well. Like we're not talking about, like there's just a lot of mass, there's a lot of volume out there. And I would be very curious to see where this would land us on that provincial average, because I'm quite certain that this still puts us on the bottom half of affordability in the province. We just have a lot of oil and gas, like a lot of gas infrastructure in this area of the country that we haven't been leaning on like we could.
And through the chair, to Councillor Kirby-White, the small business class assessment of about $82 million. So, and everyone counts, but there's not a lot. They generate $570,000 per year. And I think that's probably you made a strong point in my eyes that the scale of the oil and gas infrastructure is so enormous. It's hard to compare 1-to-1. Right. Yeah. So where the lion's share does come from the oil and gas infrastructure, we do understand the sensitivities of increasing taxes from somebody trying to make a go of it. I mean, that's not lost on anybody for sure.
But to generate an additional $7 million, if we could find a way to give out $80,000 worth of grants to those small businesses, we're talking about $80,000 worth of increase in taxes on small business in order to generate $7 million. I'm not going to die on this hill, but I just want to make sure that those numbers land, because that is the difference that we're talking about. And I'm assuming that there are ways, again, ActDev, we always talk about incentives to bring new businesses in. We also talk about incentives to keep existing businesses here. Perhaps we can handle some of this by utilizing 3% of what is generated in revenue by increasing it and putting that towards existing businesses and, you know, economic development with those that are already here, and grants and things that we can help to make them more, you know, we could finance our own economic retention through decisions like this. I rest my case for now.
Yeah, no, you make perfect sense on that, because I said the exact same thing 10 years ago when we were talking about moving it up, because we're going to lose $500,000 going south for the gas plant. because the assessment dropped down, we had to move the mill rate in order to get the same amount that we got the year before. So I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm glad you brought it down to that, because I was scrambling trying to figure it out. It is only $80,000 to our, I shouldn't say only, because that's a lot to small business and small business minds, but when you break it out, I think we have 200 or 300 small businesses in the county. Yeah. So you take $80,000 out of that to the 200 of them, that's only. Yeah. No, when you break it down that way, it's not as bad.
And through the chair, I would also suggest that there are other remedies through the MGA. Grant's great idea, but the MGA does allow council to waive any or all part of a tax. Council does have the other remedies that Steve spoke about in terms of it's a new assessment or old assessment. So the MGA does grant council the authority to waive all or part of any tax. So it could be that small business comes and says, want to talk directly to council, council waives the tax. So thank you very much for coming in. Or council determines not to waive the tax, but that is a remedy that's also available through the MGA. Granting is another one that would clearly be some availability, but there are levers that can be pulled in terms of the small business.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also very careful to wade into council debate. So, but perhaps I would present an option to council. If council thought that a 4-to-1 ratio might be an acceptable ratio, over that period, over whatever the transitionary period of time would be, it would equate to about a 32% increase over whatever time council chose. 32 divides into 4 very well, leaves us with, now I've got to double check my math, yeah, I'm right, about 8% per annum for the next 4. I'm not proposing to change any of the discussion or anything like that, but that could certainly be an option to look at that rate at an 8% per annum for the next 4. With the caveat that I would be happy to accept a motion from council to bring something back and develop a guiding principle for the next period of time to meet council's strat plan. The 4-to-1, and I'll just add that 4-to-1 was about 11 million, 10.75 million once the 4-to-1's met.
And 4-to-1 gives increases across the board to everybody.
No, the 4-to-1 only increases the linear and the small business because it's directly correlated to residential. And so if we got to a point where because the 4-to-1 might be the target, 5-to-1 might be the target, but again, like it's, as CEO Hogan mentioned earlier, 5-to-1 brings us to a certain point, and if we feel it doesn't bring us quite where we want it to, you could actually increase that end point significantly by upping the residential slightly, because for every tick of residential increase, you uptick it by 5 or 4 on the non-res. So at the end of the day, like that's a great start, and perhaps we use that as a way to kind of initiate some things, and we could probably consult and have some conversations on the small business and what we can do through the MGA in the province. Maybe we don't need all those answers today, but at least it gets us going, because the 4-to-1, in 3 years may not be where we want to be. Maybe we want to be at the 5-to-1, and that requires more conversation and more time than we have today. And so I'm prepared to make a motion eventually after this right here on kind of at least initiating some form of forward progress on this, if council feel that that's where they're at. Sorry, what are you thinking?
So would that be to Steve to come back with something soon?
Because really, we need to pass this today, right?
No, we don't.
Or not so much?
We, through the chair, we don't have to pass this today. We're happy to bring it back to May 5th. If council sees that one non-residential tax rate It'll also be the small business, and it'll also be the M&E. It's a quick calculation. Those numbers can be established into the bylaw quite quickly, and first reading as amended would be completely acceptable.
What do you guys think?
Okay, Mr. Vossler is asking for verification. So do I understand it right that we can, by resolution, waive a tax increase towards small businesses? That's what he's hearing.
Yeah, and thank you for the question through the chair to Councillor Vossler. Section 347 does allow council to waive penalties, arrears of property. It's one of the very few instances that council's not allowed to delegate to staff in the Municipal Government Act. We can't, I think the other one is can't pass a bylaw. You can't delegate that authority. There's a second part to that where it says council may phase in an increase or a decrease of taxes due to the preparation of a new assessment. So in Alberta, assessments are prepared annually, so we would have to agree that a new assessment every year would allow council to phase in an increase or a decrease. So hypothetically, council would say we would like to have an 8% increase on non-residential tax rates. Now, in the preparation of those notices, everyone would receive that 8% tax freeze. However, by resolution, council may say we want to limit the increase in taxes to 4% for small businesses. We're going to phase in that increase or decrease. We're going to use our powers under Section 347 and kind of move forward that way. There is, again, we investigated that in 2015 or 2016. I know Calgary used that clause downtown when downtown went empty. There is a pinch point exiting that plant, though. So that'll take a little bit of thought and a little bit of preparation to plan out the exit of that strategy.
Through the chair, 347 reads as follows. Cancellation, reduction, refund, or deferral of taxes. If a council considers it equitable to do so, it may, generally or with respect to a particular taxable property or business or a class of taxable property or business, do one or more of the following with or without conditions. A, cancel or reduce tax arrears. B, cancel or refund all or part of a tax. C, defer the collection of a tax. And the second part is a council may phase in a tax increase or decrease resulting from the preparation of any new assessment. According to the MGA, council has, and this council has probably seen over the years, people coming and requesting a tax, waiving a tax, waiving in arrears. That all stems from the authority given under 347 of the Act.
Lots to think about.
The best to, like, we can pass one as amended or table till the next and then pass it all three.
And Mr. Chair, from a technical perspective in terms of procedure, you could pass first reading as it is and we come back with second reading and amend second reading. You could just pass it the way it is right now as recommended, pass first reading, and then amend it at second reading on the 5th.
Yeah, I'm good with, do you want to?
Just a quick question on clarity on that. So I like the idea of passing first reading. Do you need or would you desire any kind of direction within that to bring back what we've discussed now? Because I would just hate it for it to sound like we're approving it in, in principle, when we're recognizing that we're approving it knowing that there's further conversation to have. And so I would just hate for it to be received as it's good as it is, knowing that we're going to be amending it? How would you prefer to see that worded?
I think council could, if they chose to do first reading, and then immediately following direct administration, bring back that bylaw with what the councillor would like.
Okay.
Sure, I'll make the motion that we move first reading then.
Okay. Everybody understands what we're doing here? Okay. Blaine, you understand? And Dustin? Okay. Vote. Thank you, guys. Okay, that's carried. Now for the next motion. Robin, you know what you want to...
Yeah, Ms. Collins, I'll get you to help me with this one, but that council direct administration to bring to the next council meeting in May additional information for the tax rate bylaw as discussed pertaining to the possible 4-to-1 ratio. That's vague, but it's direct enough that I think it kind of,
That's next Tuesday. Do you have enough time to get it all?
well, it's a couple calculations and just some time to think about it, right?
If it's all right, Mr. Chairman, for clarity, I think was this the one? Oh, it was the one above. If council had a percentage to direct administration to bring back, and I think we discussed, and just for clarity, I heard 8%. I heard 16%.
For clarity,
I heard
you said
8%,
8%, which is.
and I heard 16.
Yeah, which is fair. I think that to know what the 4-to-1 ratio would look like, we can determine how many years we want to take to get us there. I'd also be very curious to know, when within that spreadsheet that we had back in the day, we may be able to see that a 4-to-1 puts us at what percentile within the province, just to kind of help us to gauge a bit of a sense as to where this puts us. Or does it put us at all of a sudden now we're at one of the most expensive ones, which it won't, but I think that the 4-to-1 is the target, and then the percentage will really come down to how much time we want to phase it in.
So through the chair, could I suggest then a motion would probably be along the lines of to direct administration to bring back 3 scenarios showing 3.5, 3.75, and a 4-to-1 ratio.
I like it.
And so there's 3 scenarios to look at, and obviously 4-to-1 is what you're considering to be the goal, but we'll bring back 3 of them so there's some comparators from one to another. Does that work as a motion?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
That's what I was, sorry to interrupt, but through the chair, that's what I would like to see, because that's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I see Dustin's on camera, but does he want to talk? All I see him is bouncing around on there.
And through the chair, I know council had asked the question as to whether or not we had enough time. To be honest with you, these are actually fairly simple math calculations. We just need to sit down and drag out the decimal points to their, so we get accurate numbers. Right now, we've been working on round numbers, 2.9, as opposed to 2.9286, which is actually our residential rate. So we'll come back with it. This is not a difficult, time-consuming exercise.
I just asked because normally we have a 2-week period. You got 3 days, so 3 working days. But you got a full weekend in there, so you're good. Okay.
The motion that council direct administration to bring back 3 tax rate scenarios showing a 3.5 to 1, a 3.75 to 1, and a 4 to 1 ratio to be provided to the May 5th council meeting.
Okay, and that's Robin's motion. Can you move that other box so I can see the other two? There we go. Thank you. Okay, any questions on it? Vote? Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a rough field. Yeah. Roll that sucker.
Okay, that's carried. Good discussion on that, you guys. 4.2.
Thank you, Mayor Hamilton and the rest of council, through the chair. Next up is bylaw 2026-13. It's our special tax dust control bylaw. This is an annual housekeeping. We pass this alongside the tax rate, so these are in time to add to the tax notices. Administration is seeking approval for the special tax dust control bylaw 2026-13 to be given all 3 readings to align with the sending of tax notices. This is the dust control in front of property, the hard surfacing. Council remember that policy updated where we're no longer installing new dust control as cold mix, but it's going to a calcium chloride program. Currently, we have 308 dust patches that are sitting at the multi-lot subdivisions at a rate of $330 from the master rates bylaw. And we have 272 200-meter strips. Well, there might be a couple 400, but and those are at $500 per rate. And administration is seeking first reading, second reading, unanimous consent for third, as well as third today.
Okay. Blaine, did you want to make a motion today? You gonna make first? Okay. Any questions on it? Oh, go ahead.
To the chair, I just have a question regarding the oiled dust control patches. As we no longer offer that as a new service, how does that affect what's currently in place? How long can we expect to see the ones that are in place exist? And what does that look like if they're deemed to be taken out of, to be decommissioned?
Perhaps I can take the first question. I think I caught 2 questions there. So in the first question, the dust control is an eligible special tax. That's a good question, by the way. Thank you, Councillor Ritz. The way it's prescribed in the master rates, it's for the installation. So the upfront cost of a dust patch for the oil is I think we're around $22,000 these days. I'm not speaking out of turn. So it's about $22,000. So the annual special tax represents the cost to recuperate the original installation. And sometimes we get there and sometimes we don't. We have very old patches and some get repaired every year. So it's kind of identified as a program when council sets the rates for that dust control. So it kind of addresses the original upfront cost, not necessarily any of the maintenance. So that's probably, does that answer the first part of the question? Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. As far as the retirement of that dust patch, when it gets beyond the point of full repair, right now the repairs would be like potholes and miscellaneous through different areas. But when it comes to a point where we need to fully rip it up because the base is done, it's gone at that point.
Go ahead.
I'm kind of curious because I know some of these dust patches where there's really heavy oil field traffic, and is is the road use agreement reflect those dust patches? And in the case where there's no road agreement, how is that addressed?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. As for the last few years, all the road use agreements, when there is dust patches and industry is related to that or development, for instance, our greenhouse off the Highway 3 there, entered into a new road use agreement that included the dust patch maintenance. So that is something moving forward in road use agreements that's covered off. But as far as older ones that have increased hauling on it, where our industry coordinator is up to date on and tries to be there and understand what's going on around the county to monitor to prevent damage by direct hauling. We try to minimize those risks on that side. But there is times of the summer where it is hot and there is hauling and rutting occurs that requires some maintenance.
Mr. Kirby?
So going back probably 6 months or so, when we were talking a little bit about this, I remember actually it was during and just previous to the election, there was conversation from some of my ratepayers in an area just south of Dunmore where there were so many individuals that had gone on. It was a local improvement fee that had been charged and it's being charged every single year. I think that historically, like the local improvement fees, in a lot of places they're there with a dollar amount that eventually they get paid off over time. But then at the same time, there's a little bit of a gray area with these where it kind of is, there's it getting paid off. And then on the other side, it's that it be used for ongoing maintenance and things like that. The concern that I had voiced to me was because of the fact that this is an oiled road, it's a oiled cold mix. It feels like pavement, but it doesn't respond the same way as pavement. But the concern was what happens as that breaks down, and is there a risk that that gets turned back into gravel, which right now they view it as it's paved. It's just not a high grade paved road. How do I respond to their concerns that this all of a sudden goes back to gravel versus, I think CEO Hogan and I had a bit of a conversation at one point about whether or not at the completion of it, do we just choose, do we maintain it as that kind of a standard, recognizing that it's more than a dust strip. Now we would expect them to pave it before they would do it, coming off of the Eagle Butte. So to turn that back to gravel when our own expectations would be that it would be paved. I'm just kind of curious as to how this overlaps with that and how I can communicate that to neighbors that are concerned.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Kirby-White, I think there was a few questions in there. The first question was kind of talking about the local improvement and the plan, and does it ever get paid off? And I think it's probably worth mentioning in the Municipal Government Act, Council has the authority to establish a special tax, and special tax can be an annual tax for a service provided. The local improvement tax is a different form of tax and has a different prescribed list of the things that it can be used for example, a boulevard tax or a sewer tax. So if the local improvement, it requires a plan, the plan has to get circulated, it can be appealed, a few different things, whereas a special tax is the service is typically on an annual basis for, and it could be we're using dust control, the oiled, it would survive a few years, where a calcium chloride, it would get top applicated and perhaps had to be an annual type fee, but that's the first part.
Mr. Jacobs said keep going.
Oh, Councillor Kirby-White, would it be okay if you were talking about how to explain that to your ratepayers?
I suppose that my request to explain was a little bit more of a, can you please explain it to me so I'm clear so I can communicate to them? Just because of the fact that the way that you described it is exactly the way that I understand it. The difference is that we do, and sometimes we look at it as a special tax that's there to kind of maintain and top up. But then the language that we use, and specifically in this area, the language that is used is local improvement. And which, generally speaking, in my experience, is that a local improvement bylaw is a way that we are able to fund something and then they repay it. But then at the end of it, there's an expectation that it will continue to exist in its structure or what. And so if it's seen as a dust strip is not a local improvement. That's a tax, right? Because we're subsidizing it. And so when all of a sudden it gets to the point where you have to replace it, we can say, well, we're just going to take it out and put whatever we choose to put on it, and you'll be happy with it because it's just a tax and we're maintaining it and whatever. Whereas if it's a local improvement, there's an expectation of what they're getting. They're paying for it over 20 years or 15 years. If we did a local improvement for the Westside Water Co-op, we're not all of a sudden going to change the standard in which they get water, right? They've paid for the water. We've, financed them through their taxes. They're paying it back. At the end of it, they have a system that's paid off, and if something goes wrong with it, we fix it. And so my request for clarity, I suppose, is in an area where we say, well, it's a tax, but then the paperwork says, well, no, it's a local improvement. How do we manage that specific? I know I'm talking about like the 2% of our roads where this applies, but that's the one that I'm most curious to know about right now.
Through the chair for clarity, what paperwork have you seen that calls this a local improvement?
I'll provide it to you after the meeting.
Okay, because the bylaw and all the ensuing documents are very clear. It's a special tax.
Yeah, and I know we went through it in the fall. I'll have them on my phone. It would be difficult to do it right now in this moment, but and I can see like this will be fine for right now. This is not going to fall apart in the next 12 months, but I think it's something that we probably just want to go over, and if I'm right, we just might need to adjust some of the language in it.
And through the chair, if anybody's curious or noteworthy, if you're looking to dive into your Municipal Government Act, special tax is section 382, and the local improvement tax is 391. And you'll see the local improvement requires a little bit more of a plan, talks about the opportunity for petition, et cetera, et cetera. It talks about council can bring a local improvement on their own, or it can be brought from the community. And in the first year of the local improvement tax, it's one of a very, very rare tax that can actually be appealed at the Assessment Review Board.
Go ahead.
To call it a local improvement tax, is that confusing? Because it is kind of a little bit to me, because a local improvement bylaw, is that a tax or is it a repayment plan? Whereas a special tax that we apply is a tax to perform services. I'm just wondering if a local improvement tax could be cleaned up to either have it as a local improvement levy or a repayment versus a special tax, but to combine the two might be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, and fair enough, through the chair. As administration, I know I'm working in this every day. I think we know the nuance difference, but yeah, outwardly facing, it's listed as a local improvement tax in the act, so that's where we go to. But it certainly could be addressed in other ways as a local improvement project or otherwise for clarity. I think ultimately they are taxed because they can be they're secured by the sale of the property at tax time. So I think we may be remiss of not calling it a tax because it is then connected to the tax recovery process. But
Ms. Collins.
Yeah, just further to that, so I just did a quick search, and currently we have 7 local improvement tax bylaws, and then there's a few other plans, but.
Okay, Mr. Hawk is moving first reading. Do we need it read out, or do we know? what it is. Perfect. Any more questions on it? Vote. Blaine, were you voting or just had your hand up for a question? Voting? Okay. Yeah. That's first reading. Dustin, did you want to make the second reading? Okay, Dustin's moving second reading. Any questions or comments? Vote. That's carried. Gary's moving to have third unanimously. Any questions? Vote. Yeah, perfect. Sorry, Lloyd's moving third. Yeah. Lloyd's moving third. Vote. Okay, that's carried. We don't need to go in closed for anything. That's it then for today. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.